A Note Back to Kirk. August 21, 2020 by Anna von Reitz. Note from ed. Anna's remarks are in bold type. Kirk, please enlighten me on what you think Trump has really done. I can tell you have no clue what he's done. I'll start with 1. He corrected his status at young age and became an American national. He's not a nationalist, like the media twisted it into. Many people have no clue what that means, including you. Took control of Cestui Que Vie Trust, which is where he got his $1 million to start his business, not from his father, like the media twisted it into, which you have no clue about. Then because of that he doesn't pay personal taxes because taxes are voluntary, except for corporations acting in interstate or foreign commerce, which you have no clue about, but his businesses pay income taxes. Anna, if Trump corrected his status at a young age, there is absolutely no record or proof of that on any public record that our team has run across, and you are invited to provide proof of that statement. Moreover, when we breached the subject with him some years ago, he didn't take any action or make any reference indicating that he had already corrected his political status back to his birthright status. It may be that he corrected his status to the extent of claiming U.S. citizenship, instead of citizen of the United States status. That would be the only logical conclusion, given the fact that he is presently acting as CEO, President, of the United States of America, Inc. I think that you, Kirk, are the one that doesn't quite understand what is going on and how many layers there are to this particular onion. Taxes are voluntary if you are functioning as an American, but they are involuntary for federal citizens and those who are in direct receipt of federal-sourced income. Impersonating people as corporations, operating in any venue or capacity for the purpose of racketeering is a nasty crime that has, unfortunately, been exercised under color of law in this country, just like the pandemic crap is being exercised under color of law. Please review Governor Inslee's recent replies on that topic, and the fact that Nelson D.Rockefeller fully admitted that he paid no federal income taxes during his confirmation hearings as Jerry Ford's VP. Why couldn't Trump pull the same hat trick? It's perfectly legal for them and for us, but the difference is, they were taught the truth and took advantage of it, while the rest of us were deliberately mis-characterized and used as goats. And with the possible exception of Trump's good intentions, none of them took any action to expose or stop these crimes against average working-class Americans. Failure to report crime and take action against it results in being an accomplice to it. I know that fact certainly has motivated me on more than one occasion to stand up and scream bloody murder, and it should motivate anyone with any respect for the ultimate power of public opinion and the slow grinding mechanisms of the actual public law. 2. That makes Trump, in part, the first de jure president since Lincoln, which you have no clue about either. Anna, see above. It's impossible to be a de jure president when acting in foreign territorial and municipal, presidential offices instead. See my recent article, Hats, Hats, and More Hats. In fact, Lincoln was not eligible to serve as a de jure president of the United States of America, so even your comparison is a malaprop. Lincoln joined the Illinois Bar Association in 1835 and thereby accepted the foreign title of nobility, Esquire, from the British monarch. In 1819, the Titles of Nobility Amendment was ratified and added to the actual Constitution of the Federal Republic, the Constitution for the United States of America, prohibiting bar attorneys from serving in our government. So Lincoln was not eligible to serve as either President of the Federal Republic nor as President of the United States of America. That is part of what sparked the entire conflagration known as the American Civil War, which was demonstrably not a war, but a filthy mercenary conflict staged on our shores under false pretensions. Care to have another go at that bit of patriot myth? I can show you the muster lists where the men were called to serve the state of New York, not New York. 3. The third and final bankruptcy came to an end in 1999, which a man by the name of Russell J. Gould, go look for War Castles on YouTube to see how he saved the world from the NWO and Onum nuts, which because of that in 2012 all the Incs, United States Inc., United States of America Inc., USA Inc., etc., which you probably have no real clue about, I could be wrong on this one, were foreclosed on. Anna, another bit of distortion and self-evident bunk. If it was the third and final bankruptcy, how is it that we are once again witnessing the bankruptcy of the United States, Inc.? and the USA, Inc. Wake up, Kirk, corporations are a dime a dozen. Their bankruptcies are legend. The same group of crooks just picks another name, and skates right on, bails one bankrupt entity out and lets another fade into the sunset. Furthermore, when a bankruptcy ends, it ends. That's all she wrote. No more claims can be made, no more action taken. So anything that ended in 1999, most certainly had no result or continuing story in 2012. What you are most likely referring to are the efforts of the Paradigm Project, which discovered the crime in progress and made the effort to foreclose upon all these bogus corporations. However, there's a fly in that soup. It was done by a bar attorney, and a group of U.S. citizens, none of whom had the lawful standing to foreclose. So I am afraid that all that work went down the drain with the arrest and prosecution of Heather Tucci-Jariff and her helpers. They tried, they aren't accomplices, they stood up against the crimes against us. God bless them forever, but because their own political status was bungled, they didn't have the ability to get there from here. We do. Our answer has been a bit different. We expose the damned fraud from its inception and let the chips fall. 4. Now to talk about the other part about Trump being the first de jure president since Lincoln. The military was going to do a coup d'état on Onumnuts, but Trump said he would run for office and they could do it lawfully. There's so much here to try and explain, but you know what Trump has really done, right? Anna. See above regarding de jure offices of the president and the variations in the de facto world of incorporated entities. Trump's present office is not de jure, and Lincoln's office, which was also not de jure, was a good part of the reason that the Southern Confederation walked out. The actual fight was about cotton, not slavery. The British government had invested heavily in Egyptian cotton plantations, hoping to undercut American producers, but things didn't work out the way they planned. The Egyptian crops failed, the transportation costs were more than anticipated, and by 1855 it was apparent that Britain had to knock down the American cotton producers in order to rescue its own textile industry and Egyptian cotton investments. It seems ridiculous now, but wasn't ridiculous then. Imagine the ire of the southern state representatives when they are told in the midst of this brutal commercial war with England over their cash crop, that a British barrister, Lincoln, a bar attorney, already prohibited from serving in our actual government, is going to serve as president, by entering and operating in the territorial office of President of the United States of America, instead of acting in the intended office of President of the United States. It was, if you read the contemporary accounts, the final straw. 5. After Trump won the election, despite all the voter fraud, and yes they are all about to get busted, Trump said at his inauguration speech that he was putting the power back into the people's hands. You remember that, right? Because you've been paying attention to what Trump has really done, right? Anna. Yes, indeed. I wrote Mr. Trump a letter immediately afterward, and formally acknowledged and accepted his offer in the name of our unincorporated Federation of States and the people we serve. It's a great idea, but I am not convinced that Mr. Trump has gotten down the next layer of the onion he is peeling day by day. He tends to venerate the military and perhaps doesn't know that the military is uniquely responsible for the worst of what has gone on here and always has been since Lincoln issued the very first executive order as commander-in-chief and adopted the Lieber Code, making the Union Army responsible for the settlement of the peace and for the safeguarding of our money in March of 1863, exactly one day before he, Lincoln, bankrupted the Northern Confederation. You can judge for yourself what kind of care they have taken of our assets and our money and their failure to settle the peace. We are still enduring every kind of stupid war they can dream up, including the current war against the common cold virus. When on earth does this crapola end? All of it. The complicity of the military in all of this is self-evident and outrageous. The Lieber Code has since morphed into the Hague Conventions, and we, American civilians, have been used as the prey of our own military forces engaged in deliberately misidentifying their actual employers as the enemy and pillaging and plundering on our shores for no better reason than that they wanted more money. They are jerks, criminals, fraud artists, filthy, violent, short-sighted, and greedy. Most of them need the ever-loving shit kicked out of them. They know damned well that they are supposed to be obeying our civilian authority, so they attempt to redefine civilian and try to misidentify us as foreigners in our own country. Don't get me started. I have had some very choice words with the Joint Chiefs, and the most that can be said of those fractious cowards is that so far they have avoided being pawned into another civil war with their brethren in the Federal Civil Service. 6. Trump pulled us out of the TPPN right out of the gate, saved us $500,000 per year, as well as pulled us out of a lot of other bad deals, like providing military support to other countries and paying them hundreds if not millions of dollars a year. Started pulling our military out of countries we shouldn't have been in the first place, as well as renegotiated the terms of, if want our military protection you're going to have to pay us. He's slowly pulled us out of the UN. Anna. Applause all round for that, but then, what choice has he had as a business manager trying to avoid bankruptcy? Americans have been supporting over 800 military bases worldwide and picking up the tab for virtually all defense expenses for Europe, Japan, Australia, Canada, Mali, Monterey and Biscayne Bay, you name it. We've been, in, all these countries commandeering their natural resources, bossing their people around, and paying for the privilege. None of this has anything valid to do with defending America. It has to do with military payola and coercive power. And just for shits and grins, if Trump wants to pull out of the UN Corp, which the military owns a large chunk of, if not the controlling interest, he can make a clean job of it by issuing an executive order suspending the public policy, granting immunity to international organizations on our shores expressed as the Privileges and Immunities Act, and also pull the plug on the International Organizations Immunity Act, passed under Jimmy Carter's hopelessly vile administration. Just pull the damned plug. But no, he waited too long and dilly-dallied and tried to get his bearings and didn't listen to us, so now, both governmental services corporations are in receivership, up a creek and looking for a paddle, and all just in time for the enemies of all sane people to kick him in the crotch during the general elections, which are not general elections of any public law or government and should not take place at all, but that's another subject. Speaking of those who need to get a clue. 7. Now this is where things start to get good. March 14, 2017. EO doing a complete audit of the entire executive branch and for 6 months asked for help from the people to report on any issues we thought needed to be redressed, because we redress our grievances with government. See First Amendment, which is also how ultimately E-clause got created October 2017, which is why I keep telling you and others that I really know what's going on because I've been a part of it since 2017. Anna. Oh, gee. 2017. I've been part of it since, let's see. 1970. That's only 47 years more than you, Kirk. What do I know, right? The way I redress grievances with my employees may be a bit different than your concept of redress, which involves the British government and their practice of listening to petitions from their hapless slaves and subjects. It was exactly the failure of the territorial government's form of redress that led to the American Revolution, and it's not doing any better job now. I have seen the redress being received by loyal U.S. citizens like Phil Huddock. It's fascinating, but not nice. First, the poor sod is forced to admit being a natural person, which in probate law means a corpse. How convenient. All our estates have been lumped into probate. We've all been deliberately misidentified as infant decedents. And now to permanently preclude legal challenges based on the totally unconscionable contacts with babies used to perform these vile acts of legal chicanery, the victims are coerced to sign paperwork admitting that they accept this status as dead persons and give up their lawful estates and their assets in exchange for what? Debt notes against their own assets and credit. Brilliant. So we pay for it coming and we pay for it going. What a sweet little plan for the guilty Queen and the Pope. Get the fools to sign their own death warrants, seize their estates, and pay them off using their own credit so that they are indebted for what they receive. You need to get your head screwed on, Kirk, get your legal dictionary out and on the table in front of your ignorant young face, and start singing another story if you want any agreement, cooperation or respect from me. 8. Presidential Memorandum for the heads of executive departments and agencies issued on October 26, 2017. All new subject. Temporary certification for certain records related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Of course you know all about this, right? Anna, it would be just lovely if someone in any of their organizations with the power to do it had the basic decency and brass cojones to expose who actually killed JFK and why they did it. But you know, those of us who watched the news coming out of Dallas that day have known the truth since November of 1963. It's not our good sense and honor at stake, it's the government's credibility that is at issue. And that is why the government, corporations should come clean. JFK was killed by LBJ, his vice president, acting in collusion with Richard Milhous Nixon, the Dulles brothers, the Gambino crime syndicate, Fidel Castro, half a dozen top oil industry bosses, and rogue elements of the British Secret Service enlisted and duped by GHWB. To quote Gomer Pyle, cui bono. We knew the truth then and we know the truth now and we are still sickened by it and we still hate the men responsible for it, whether they are living or dead. I was sorting through donated baby clothes at a disaster relief center one afternoon with other volunteers, all nice Baptist ladies who wouldn't say shit if they had a mouthful of it, and somehow the subject of LBJ came up. I heard this voice I didn't quite recognize, mine, of course, saying quite calmly but emphatically, "LBJ, I hated him then and I still hate him now, and his wife could best beautify America by dying." I actually put it a little more emphatically than that. There were some purple words in the mix, but you got the picture, Kirk. I went out in the parking lot and leaned against my car and sobbed like a little girl for half an hour. There's some of us that have been around a long, long time. There are some memories that don't go away, things that just get harder as the years go by, and it gets to the point where the mills of God catch up with all the lies. Grind, grind, grind. Can there be any doubt that the truth will also catch up with the liars? 9. Now for what Trump did next, which you're fully aware of because you know what he has really done, right? First he re-established the rule of law December 10, 2017 by proclamation, right after the paperwork went in and E-tilde clause was created. Wonder what was in that practitioner's judicial report. The Declaration of Independence, Constitution of the United States of America 1787 with the Bill of Rights 1789 as the bedrock of this nation called America. Anna. All wrong again, bless you for a fool. You are trying, right? Whenever any older, presumably jurist says the words, rule of law, you should smirk and quickly hide your smirk, or put on your best dumb poker face and wide-eyed stare and pretend that you don't know what I am going to tell you right now, in public, in front of a billion people. The rule of law is an insider joke. It refers to the rules of the court, which the court in the British system makes up for itself, according to whatever best pays the court and the king. Screw justice. She's blind and can't testify in her own behalf. The Declaration of Independence is the only bedrock of this nation. The constitutions are merely power-sharing agreements that ended the War of Independence. The specific constitution you reference is the one that I brought to light, and which everyone in your group said didn't exist, and called me a liar and an old dingbat, and what was it? Something about a C word and another C word. Until we drug it out of the closet with the help of volunteers from too many sources to poo-poo. And that particular constitution does happen to be the actual American Constitution giving rise to the Federal Republic, the missing portion of what is supposed to be our federal government. Yep. The problem is that you and apparently Mr. Trump think that you are in the position to just say, whoop and abracadabra, and recreate the Federal Republic out of thin air. Sad to say, that's not possible. You see, the service contract and trust indenture and everything else associated with that constitution was awarded to the States of America, a business venture and doing business as name of our Confederation of American States of States formed under the Articles of Confederation in 1781. So, Kirk, in order to restore the Federal Republic and the contract underlying it, you have to restore the States of America. This is what is referred to as the Reconstruction, that was never finished. In order to reconstruct, you have to call the states of the Union into session, and each state in the Federation has to create a new state-of-state organization to fill their vacant spot in the associated Confederation, and then the Confederation has to reboot the States of America to operate the Federal Republic. Think, Kirk, if this were easy, do you think we'd still be standing here 160 years later with our thumbs up our butts? Thanks to us, the first part of it is already underway. The actual states have been summoned into session and enough living Americans have been found to populate lawful state assemblies. They are competent to organize American states of states for themselves, recoup the state trusts, and reconvene the Confederation, and then the Confederation will be competent to operate the states of America and finally fill in the missing piece of the federal government. This is what it actually and factually requires to complete Reconstruction, and if the President and other geniuses are unaware of this, it's high time that somebody told them. How about you, Kirk, since you have been involved at the highest levels ever since 2017? Then December 20, 2017 by EO declaring a state of emergency to block the property civil asset forfeiture of those involved in serious human rights violations and corruption, which involves human trafficking both Part A and B, but you know all about that too, right? Worldwide Anna, good show, as in kick dancers, so far. Why is it that George Soros still appears to be hale and hearty and contributing large amounts of money to seditious groups and activities and Hollywood-style propaganda productions presented to the unwary public as documentaries? Why is Bill Gates still in evidence, out trotting around and taking pies in the face? And Mark Zuckerberg and all the rest of the privileged rat pack? Not as I do, but as I say. Sorry, I can't make sense of this. The federal government corporations are the biggest purveyors of human trafficking in history, the biggest gun runners, drug pushers, alcohol sellers. Sin taxes are how the federal government is supposed to be funded, full stop, so what now? They arrest themselves and march themselves to jail, presumably to the tune of Yankee Doodle Dandy? Why is the IRS still functioning, still stealing assets from innocent Americans and putting liens on American homes? Why are all these filthy, and I do mean filthy, banks being allowed to continue to foreclose and seize bogus escrow accounts as abandoned funds? Why isn't there a mortgage moratorium in effect right now throughout this country? Impersonation, as we have already discussed, is a serious crime and a serious human rights violation that results in trafficking people from one political status to another, and results in subjecting them to foreign law in contravention of Amendment 11 of all three constitutions. Impersonation is a crime so serious that the humans guilty of it are on the wrong side of the Geneva Conventions and the Hague Conventions, both. We are talking Nuremberg Code and you are talking civil asset forfeiture. But neither one is actually getting done. Why isn't the Clinton Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the bulk of the Roman Catholic Church holdings other than their parish buildings, the mainstream media monopoly, and a whole lot more already forfeited? Why aren't all these patently illegal and constitutionally prohibited municipal corporations shut down and forfeited to the actual states and people? Other than Washington, D.C., there shouldn't be a municipality or municipal government of any kind in this entire country. Hello? You think that bullying people to take untested vaccines and wear masks isn't a human rights violation? Holy moly guacamole, it seems that you guys just can't connect what you see with what you think. I am all for them, the guilty parties, getting their assets forfeited, but what I really want to see is a complete end to all predatory actions against innocent Americans. I am all for the UN Corp being booted into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean without a lifeboat. Release the bogus federal tax liens on people who never owed federal taxes in their lives. Shut down the bogus federal tax authority that is sending notices to people all over America and offering to settle debts these people never owed. Shame on everyone concerned. When I see actual, factual, meaningful action taken to seize property from people like Soros and observe actual action taken to shut down the foreclosure mills and punish the banks and the securities corporations, I'll stand up and sing the praises of everyone responsible, including Trump. Until I can hear it, smell it, taste it, and see the cockroaches running, it's all just more nice words. Then he came out in a press conference and said he was going after the world child pedophilia and going to wipe them off the earth. A fact sheet, March 13, 2018. My administration will focus on ending the absolutely horrific practice of human trafficking. And I am prepared to bring the full force and weight of our government, whatever we can do, in order to solve this horrific problem. Anna. Here, I agree. I support this 100%. I'll trip the vermin when they come running out the door and step on their necks for you. But first we have to stop the conversion of men and women into persons, because that is the beginning of being redefined as a human, and one must be redefined as a human before one can be human trafficked, and then we have to clean the clocks of everyone that ever profited from this unlawful conversion, and confiscate their ill-gotten gains and return true right and substance to the people to whom it is owed. We need to raise high holy hell, and I am not kidding, complete full dress with a banshee in tow. You see, it's not just the hideous witches and warlocks that prey upon little children. It's the Bureau of Vital Statistics that registers them as persons belonging to the British Crown Corporation and subjects them as property belonging to the Lord Mayor, and his Satan-worshipping Westminster government, and the bankers of Fleet Street. Stop that process, and you stop 9/10 of the degradation process where it starts. And you end the great fraud at its roots. Wise up, young Kirk. People are not persons. Men are not humans, aka humans. Human means color of man, in the same sense as color of law. It has nothing to do with physical color or race. It's a legal trap. It's more bullshit. This whole mantra of human rights is more entrapment, more getting the victims to dig their own graves, unwittingly admit to slave status instead of claiming their true status as free men and women. This is something Mr. Trump and a whole lot of people need to know. You're not a human. You're a man. President Donald J. Trump, and in it he says, in February 2017, the President signed Executive Order 13773, enforcing federal law with respect to transnational criminal organizations and preventing international trafficking. Anna. See above. Start shutting down child registry services by the busloads. This is the single largest source of unlawful conversion and human trafficking of the victims of unlawful conversion. Then March 1, 2018 he dug up an old EO from 1984 and made amendments to the UCMJ Uniform Code of Military Justice, and created the MCM Manual for Courts Martial, which all became effective January 1, 2019. That's why the deep state is scrapping their pants. Anna. One can only hope to live long enough to see it applied. Then this executive order regarding the establishment of the Task Force on Market Integrity and Consumer Fraud Law and Justice issued on July 11, 2018. Anna. Yes, I wrote to them several times and never received as much as a return receipt back. How about the consumer fraud of a foreign commercial corporation presenting itself as the government of this country? Kirk. Then he went over to England and raided the Vatican, I think it was 6 times, and shut down the Vatican and London, if you have a clue what that even means. But you know what Trump has really done, right? Which is part of the Tri-City States, DC being the third, that have been in control of the money, birth certificates, Cestui Que Trust, since 1666, and said that we are going back to natural law and getting rid of both constitutions. You would have to know the history of law to know what he is talking about, but you know what Trump is really doing, right? Anna. Indeed. Where are the results? Where's the mortgage moratorium? The shutdown of child registries throughout the world? The absence and silence of all Internal Revenue Service organizations? The total erasure of bogus debt claims? IRS liens? Property taxes? The issuance of national credit owed to every single American? The end of gross propaganda campaigns? The quashing of pandemics that don't exist? The punishment of the banks and securities firms and the oversight organizations like the SEC that let them get away with all this crap? The arrest of members of Congress for open treason? The arrest of members of the military that contributed to all this? All Trump has to do is tell the truth and the entire Western world would rise up in a single giant wave of public outrage and sweep away the entire edifice of the great fraud, but instead, it's all pussyfoot, rumors and more rumors. Don't tell me, Kirk. Show me. I'm from Wisconsin, but I learned a few lessons from Missouri. Trump has also been working on taking down the international banking cartel, which is part of the Tri-City States, and took control of the Fed aka Federal Reserve and put it under the Department of Treasury, where our money belongs, and put the Secret Service in charge of oversight and investigations. But you knew that already because you know what Trump is really doing, right? Anna. Well, yes, Kirk, I did know all that. But Trump doesn't have to work at it, he has the absolute power to simply do it. He and Steve Mnuchin are the two men in charge of the Exchange Stabilization Fund, ESF, and they can use this immense currency commodity rigging fund to do whatever they want to any national currency or bank that they please. The problem is that the Federal Reserve already shut down its trade-marked Federal Reserve System and bankrupted it back in 2009, and they skipped town with the profits. Kirk. They are long gone, leaving us with all their worthless script to make good. But that wasn't enough. They had to rub salt in the wounds and have Obama give the Chinese engraving plates and printing presses and paper and ink to produce an endless supply of $100 Federal Reserve notes and counterfeit trillions of US dollars more and try to shuffle it off onto our weary backs and then claim that they, the Chinese, haven't been paid. Where'd they get the money to buy our infrastructure, dumbshits? How is it that Hillary Clinton could sell 20% of our uranium to the Russians? How is it that the Chinese showed up claiming to own the port of Long Beach, the port of Anchorage, the port of Valdez, and most of the goddamned Pacific Fleet? It's all nothing but fraud, counterfeiting, white-collar bunco, and all aided and abetted by agency personnel and governmental services corporations and, yes, you'd better believe it, military officials. Lots of them. Maybe it would be instructive for you, Mr. Big Mouth Fancy Pants, to know that there hasn't been an actual United States Treasury since 1924. The International Monetary Fund has been functioning in that capacity ever since. Got that straight now? So when the Federal Reserve is rolled over into the U.S. Treasury, what does that actually mean? And who runs and backs the IMF? Well, it was founded by the Rockefellers, those inveterate pipeline comptrollers, and all they did was to do to banking what J.D. Rockefeller did to the oil industry until he got busted for it. Thank you, that's the SWIFT system, unless they don't want it to be SWIFT, and then, mysteriously, everything kinda disappears or is unaccountably delayed, or fails to get transferred. And who does business with the IMF? Oh, all the usual suspects: the U.S. Army Municipal Corporation, and the U.S. Navy Municipal Corporation, and the U.S. Air Force Municipal Corporation, and the U.S. Marine Corps Municipal Corporation, and the United States Government Municipal Corporation, and Serco, used to be British RCA, and the UN Corporation Municipal Corporation, and Washington, D.C. Municipal Corporation, and NASA Municipal Corporation, and FBI Municipal Corporation, and the list goes on and on and on and on, and includes virtually every governmental services corporation in all of Europe, Africa, the Middle East, Australia, Mexico, Canada, South America. Heck, they've even got the world government and its new headquarters in Antarctica. Isn't that sweet and inclusive? Nobody got left out. There are incorporated municipal corporation franchises named after every country and principality and burg and small-town preacher on earth. This is how former IMF Director Legrand could drink champagne and talk about how she was going to ear tag all the cattle, and reduce the world population, apparently via cannibalism. You've got a lot to learn, Kirk, before you go sparring with me and inferring that I am just a little slow and behind the times. Better get booking. No time like the present. If you and your generation work half as hard as I have, you might yet avoid winding up on somebody's dinner plate. Part of the other reorganization Trump put the DOJ in place for the people to report these criminals to, following due process of law and our right to redress our grievances through the legislature, as well as the DOD with the MCM to try the treasonous criminals under Admiralty jurisdiction like it says in the Constitution. But you knew that already because you know what Trump has really done, right? Anna. What Trump should have done with the DOJ in my opinion is to disband it and completely rack the office of the U.S. Attorney General. Those bastards are the ones that put together fraudulent claims against the assets of our counties for use as collateral for their debts while they owned Wells Fargo Bank and used it as a securities corporation instead. Nice. Most people don't realize it, but the DOJ is yet another unauthorized agency that derives from the endlessly productive Scottish interloper, doing business as the United States of America Incorporated from 1868 to 1906. The DOJ was created to defend the rats at public expense, so we got the joy of paying for their lawyers to protect them against us, their actual employers. More diabolical reasoning. Disband it. Get rid of it. Throw it under the bus. It's full of bar attorneys, and bar attorneys are esquires, prohibited from holding any office in our government, which includes any office of the U.S. Attorney General. Baw and humbug. Kirk, there's a lot more that he's done, but this is all off the top of my head except the 2 quotes and the JFK assassination document. I don't think you quite know what you're talking about, nor are you even close to having a clue what Trump has done and is doing to save the world while putting his and his family's life on the line. Many assassination attempts have been made. Anna, I am not Trump's enemy. I'd do a great deal more to help him, if he were more forthcoming. I'll help anyone who is loyal to this country and its people. But as far as having a clue about what has to be done and how to do it, I am afraid I am a long way down the track compared to Mr. Trump and you. I've been studying these subjects and considering the solutions for many years, and you could learn a lot from me if you weren't so stuffed up on yourself and the pieces of the puzzle that you do know. He's exposing the whole shit show and taking them down, which is what JFK was trying to tell us and do, and Bush Sr. and his commies assassinated him for, which is why him and Romney, correction, it was John McCain, were sentenced to death by military tribunal, and you knew about that too, right? Anna, the problem, Kirk, is that John McCain lived the high life for decades while betraying this country and occupying a seat in the Congress and claiming to be a war hero when he was nothing but a despicable coward and liar and mean-spirited, crooked, vicious, nasty little bastard of the kind I used to hate in grade school. All washed down with a smile. How is it that nobody caught on to the fact that he spilled his guts to the Viet Cong and lived a privileged life while supposedly suffering so much as a prisoner of war? How is it that nobody caught on that he was never a Republican? How is it that nobody ever tracked him back to the poppy fields in Afghanistan? The burning of the oil wells in Kuwait? The weapons of mass destruction story, told to us by the big doofus tool of Daddy Nazi? The use of so-called spent uranium and other nuclear fission waste to load artillery shells exploded all over the Middle East? The Liberty attack? The development and funding of the whole ISIS campaign by HSBC and the Bank of England and John McCain? Are you going to stand there and try to tell this great-grandma that the Joint Chiefs and the military brass from here to Bangkok didn't know what he was doing? And none of them had the guts to put a bullet through his brain until it became apparent that he was dying of a brain tumor anyway? And more to the point, if they didn't start picking some targets to pin the blame on, they'd be next in line for the gallows. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. Kirk, I don't know what kind of cow pie you are trying to sell me, but it's not working. The military gurus sat there on their asses for almost 50 years and did nothing but suck up to this craven traitor. They saluted and said, "Yes sir, Senator McCain, sir." So, great, if indeed they put McCain out of his misery. Pointedly, few deserved it for a longer period of time. But to date, this remains a rumor. I'm old-fashioned. I don't believe everything I hear. And when it is something like, secret military tribunals, supposedly getting rid of all the bad guys, I'm sorry, but since the military was primarily responsible for all this crap ever since 1863, I'd like to see actual proof that they are doing their jobs and cleaning up the mess they've made of this country and this entire world for the past 160 years. I am ready to applaud loudly if they are, but frankly, they've been such deceitful, disloyal, sneaky, irresponsible, unaccountable, mean-spirited, greedy, small-minded, grasping, arrogant, crooked, criminally inclined excuses for shit that I am not persuaded to trust anything they say unless both hands and their dicks are on the table. And I am allowed to do my own fact-checking. I think you can see what I mean. They have been in control since 1863 and it is what it is. Links to Anna's articles and resources can be found in the video description box. Thank you for subscribing, liking and sharing. If you enjoy having Anna's latest articles made into videos, please consider making a purchase from Ed's website sacredintuitiveelements.com. Thank you.